Whoop, the dynamic duo!
Hey guys, welcome to the Dynamic Duo. I'm Franz.
I'm Kevin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Avengers Tower and the Batcave. Captain America has been very, very busy taking care of the Red Skull, Kang, and the rest of the Avengers universe. And I have been busy with the Riddler, the Joker, Catwoman, and Penguin, but we are here once more.
I love it. Yeah, we have been we haven't produced any shows in the past couple of weeks, so I've been looking forward to do this to doing this show. The problem is so much has happened in the meantime that there's a lot to discuss. So as normally, what we'll do is we'll break up the shows into different topics so that we don't have a 2 hour long show. My question to you, Kevin, is what is the first topic that you want to address?
The madness and wildness of one James Gunn and Warner Brothers. And within that space, of course, the future of the DC cinematic and comic book universe.
Yes. Yes. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to lay it right out. And if people are going to hate me and not like me, so be it. James Gunn is out of his mind. He's lost it. Okay. The reason why I say he has is because all of the decisions that have been made since the holiday season and beyond to dismiss Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, Ben Affleck, and anyone else that has been connected to their DC cinematic world, including Jason Momoa and on down the line, this is a mistake. It's a pure mistake. I must admit, I understand what Mr. Gunn and company want to do with reestablishing their cinematic timeline or cinematic world using younger actors. I'm not against that. It's the way that it was done and the way that they're going about it. Okay. This doesn't work on any level at all. I personally believe that between Gunn himself, David Zaslav, and all concerned, that they have not only damaged the Warner Brothers name and what they represent, but I also believe that all of this has also damaged the DC line, the DC name, and as long as this haphazard way of thinking and way of planning continues, because there doesn't really seem to be a clear plan with this. They're just doing these things because they feel like doing it. And that's what I fear, that they're basically going to kill what might be left or salvageable within their movie universe. It's just they're and I'm not saying that you couldn't have gotten rid of Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, and all concerned, because you're going in a different direction. My whole issue about them being gone is the way that it was done.
Tell me more about that. Tell me, for the sake of the audience, let them know how it was done and what your objection to the process is. By the way, I fully agree with you, but go on.
Number one, first and foremost, it was very, very irresponsible and idiotic. For those that have seen Black Adam, the world knows at large that Henry Cavill's portrayal of Superman ends up in the post-credit sequence at the end of the movie. He's there. And the reason why I say it was idiotic and stupid is because the man was under contract, regardless of whether he was under contract before or after Zaslav. It was very irresponsible for DC to basically set up, okay, Cavill is back as Superman, which is what the fans at large and people that were Cavill fans have wanted for so many years. They allowed him to go on social media, on various platforms, and talk about returning to DC, returning to Warner Brothers, coming back to the character. And weeks after, if not days, in all honesty, after he made his public announcements and praised the fan base at large for supporting him and supporting the return of Supes, he was fired. In the case of Gal Gadot, because of whatever problems that Warner Brothers has with Patty Jenkins on a creative level, as a director, writer, what have you, she was fired not long after Cavill was. Within that same space, an announcement had been made that Ben Affleck was being released from his Warner Brothers and Batman contract for what I believe now is the third time in a row. And the last person that has been dismissed, well, not the last actually, within that same space, and pardon me for putting it this way, folks, because I know I'm sounding like I'm repeating myself, but because of issues that James Gunn had with Dwayne Johnson, he has been released from his Warner Brothers contract because the studio wasn't apparently all that happy with the final results of Black Adam, and or the way that Johnson was kind of walking around strutting his stuff and saying, hey, this has been great, I'm looking forward to coming back. And lo and behold, he was fired.
Yeah.
And not long after that, Jason Momoa was told, you're only going to get 2 shots at playing Aquaman. Apparently, and for all intents and purposes, the only person that they have kept so far has been Zachary Levi in terms of Shazam. And ladies and gentlemen, I have to be honest with you, if Shazam fails or if it begins to hit a bump in the road, they're not going to keep him either. And trust me, you heard it here, first, second, third, fifth, however you want to look at it, they're going to get rid of him too. And the strangest part of this, and we'll talk about this later on, is that through all of the mishmash, they apparently are keeping the one person that should be fired, and that is one Mr. Ezra
Miller. That's the, I was waiting for you to get to that, because that's the most ironic thing. Like, the one person that we know does not belong and should be fired is the one person they seem to be keeping. Now, let me start off by saying that I completely agree with you. I agree with you that this whole thing has been chaotic. It's been just an absolute mess. And whatever you might say about it, ultimately, that's not good. Ultimately, that's not acceptable, and it's a failure. You shouldn't have chaos in any sort of organization or plan or business setting or anything like that. And the way things have happened have been chaotic. Henry Cavill is on. No, he's off. He's on. He's off. No, he's got a contract. No, he doesn't. He's making an appearance in Shazam. Well, he's back. He makes an announcement. He's off, and so on and so forth. And that's been true for, as you just stated, for a lot of things. But for me, I find that this is a much more involved and complicated process rather than just looking at James Gunn. Again, I'm recognizing that James Gunn is failing. I'm giving him a bad grade, but I'm looking at it in context. I'm giving him that bad grade in context. And the context that I'm looking at it in is it's the full picture. I feel like one of the topics that I want to discuss with you today, and it won't be on this show, so I hope you guys join us for the future show, is what exactly are the fans looking for in a superhero movie? What is the determination of a good superhero movie? Because there's a lot of confusion about that. And there's a lot of contradictions about that as well. On the one hand, fans demand one type of movie. When they get it, they reject it based on the fact that there's politics, there's the director, and there's all kinds of things going on that make movies like uncertain. There's the reality that there are budget restrictions, that Warner Brother has been in the red for quite some time. And so there are limitations as to what James Gunn can and cannot do. So, for example, keeping Gal Gadot is not just a decision of keeping Gal Gadot. It's keeping Gal Gadot with the contract that she's already set, which means there's a financial impact and a greater risk in a future movie. And so it's not just a clear-cut, straight-up decision type of thing. The other thing is, as I said, keeping Gal Gadot, well, keeping Henry Cavill, keeping all these characters, there's one faction that says, you must absolutely keep her. There's another faction that says, no, we don't want Gal Gadot. We don't want Zack Snyder's verse. Or so there's a lot of, perilous pitfalls that these decisions have to be made on that I take into consideration. So ultimately, I think that the mistake that James Gunn is making is overreacting to the situation at hand. The situation at hand being fans being disillusioned, the situation at hand being budget restrictions and Warner Brothers' financial standings. I think what you have to do is concentrate on making good movies. And I think you have to just trust and rely that that's going to be enough. And I think you have to sort of pare down your medium and understand what it is that you want to produce. As such, I think you have some key players that you shouldn't lose under any circumstance, regardless of the price, regardless of the cost. I think that Henry Cavill, as Superman, not only does he embody a great Superman in terms of looks, in terms of character, in terms of everything, not only are we used to him as Superman and we want him to be Superman, but there's going to be that sort of backlash of acceptance of a new actor playing that role, because we're going to still, Henry Cavill had to come in and sort of kind of make us forget about Christopher Reeves. He had to deal with that issue. So Henry Cavill himself had to deal with replacing Christopher Reeves. And that's 20 years prior. Giving me a new actor who's not going to be quiet as Superman as Henry Cavill, and he's certainly not going to be Henry Cavill, it's going to take a little thing to accept. So for those reasons and more, I would negotiate with Henry Cavill. And I think that based on what we've seen, he'd be reasonable. His agents would be reasonable to that offer to say, look, here's the financial situation. Here's what we can pay you. Dude, the guy's making Netflix movies, okay? So he can accept a little bit of a lower pay, maybe some of a back-end type of contract, and say, look, we need to keep you as Henry Cavill. We have a plan for you that's going to bring Superman to the forefront. I would do the same thing with Gal Gadot. I really would. And perhaps that's where it stops for me. I don't feel the same way for Ben Affleck. Not because I don't love Ben Affleck's Batman. It's my favorite Batman. I love that Batman. I think he does a great job. Simply because Ben Affleck is getting older. His body is changing. One minute he's kind of bulky. The other minute he's kind of skinny, depending on the role that he's playing. Sometimes he's a little bit overweight. All those issues, plus the age, I would say we can move on from Ben Affleck. And all the other actors. Jason Momoa is a great Aquaman. He's a great Jason Momoa Aquaman. He's not necessarily a great Aquaman. What I mean by that is that the prototypical comic Aquaman is closer to Orm, the guy that played Orm in the movie. Mm-hmm. That's what Aquaman looks like. So I love Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I would keep him. I would definitely make that effort to keep him as well. I think he's part of the Trinity, but not so much as I would Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot. And so, but here's the other thing. The other thing is, then what do you deliver? What type of movie do you deliver? And that's the second show that I want to talk to you about, because it's like, what are the fans looking for? Like, what is a good superhero movie? What is the definition of that? Let me tell you something. It is my opinion that Superman, Man of Steel is a great movie. It's not my favorite. It's not even among one of my favorite movies, but I think it's a really, really well delivered movie. Well acted, well scripted. It has all the emotional impact and so on and so forth. There's a million reasons why I think this is a solid, really well done superhero movie. Some of the action sequences between Superman and the Kryptonians, to me, that's one of the best, some of the best in superheroes movies. I really like. If I was going to do a check mark of all the things, I would give it a 10 on almost all the check marks. Why doesn't it resonate with me? It's because Zack Snyder went a little too far from pulling him away from Superman. Just a little too far. The origin story, the father's death, the toned down costume, even though it's a superhero costume, and I give it props for it, little things like that. I love, with no excuses, I love BVS, but people hate BVS. They consider it as one of the worst movies ever, which I will go to my grave disagreeing on, because I have seen Love and Thunder, and if you there's no comparison between Love and Thunder.
Go ahead.
But and I've seen Ragnarok, and there's no comparison between Ragnarok.
Oh, second one. Go ahead.
And so on and so forth. And so the question is, what do you do? Like, what do you do? How do you deliver the Superman movie? Because here's the truth. Politics is playing a role into it as much as quality. Politics is playing a role. The politics of tribalism. There are pro Zack Snyder people who, if you just mention, I'm a pro Zack Snyder guy, but I can critique and criticize Zack Snyder. I'm not on the Zack Snyderverse bandwagon. I'm not. I don't want that. I don't want DC to go in that direction. But there's a Zack Snyder fan base out there that's like, Zack Snyder or bust. They've been empowered by creating the Zack Snyder version of the Justice League. They've achieved that, and so now they're drunk on their power, and they think they can rule Warner Brothers based on that. And so anything that comes that's not Zack Snyder approved, that group is going to dislike it no matter what. There's the anti SJW people, the AIWs, as I call them, anti-inclusivity warriors, who, if it has a hint of any inclusivity or any diversity, they hate it for the sake of hating it. Like, there's hatred for movies that people haven't seen. There's the Marvel versus DC crowd, where if it's a DC movie, they hate it. If it's and so there's all those factors that come into determining what makes a good movie that we don't know. Black Panther was a terrific. You and I, we reviewed it. That's a great movie. Great movie. There should be no criticism of that movie. But guess what? There are haters out there for Black Panther, and they're coming for Black Panther. In my opinion, Black Adam is a prototypical super. I'm getting into the next conversation. The point I'm trying to say, and we'll talk about that later. The point I'm trying to say is that we have poisoned this industry. It's not just the producers. It's not just the directors. And I put blame on them too. I do. I put blame on them for not understanding the material, for de-superheroing the material, the medium, the genre. I put a lot of blame on them, not getting it. But to me, it's a complete mess in terms of where the blames lie. And I've sort of put my hands up and I've given up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go see the movies that I'm interested in. I'm going to enjoy what I enjoy, and I can't, I'm just going to, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if all that jumbled stuff made all that many sense.
It did. And if you'll allow me just a few extra minutes here, I again agree with you completely. The other reason, if there has to be a core reason why any of this is happening, in my own opinion. I think a lot of this happens not only just because of what you said about people that are putting these things together and not understanding the material, not understanding the source materials, etc. I think a lot of what Mr. Gunn is doing at Warner Brothers is because even though he has made the 3 Guardians movies for Disney and for Marvel, I think he's trying to stick it to them in his own little way from what happened before.
Yeah.
And this is his way of saying, nah, I'm helping to run Warner Brothers. Yeah. Personally, I would have not hired the man because I don't think his resume is diverse enough to take the responsibility that this job comes with.
I agree.
Okay. Yes, he made the 3 Guardians films, and the 3rd one hasn't even been released yet. But when you get right down to it, let's be honest. 3 Guardians movies, and your primary factor within the story, even if it's 3 different stories, you're talking about a world where you've literally made 3 movies that are almost identical in their own right.
You're right. Okay. And by the way, the second one is not good. It's not a good movie. It's not bad, but it's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination.
Understood. I wouldn't say, well, like you just said, honestly, it to me, it doesn't equal the energy and punch that the first one had.
Correct.
That's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. The second one was passable. I did enjoy it as a movie, but that's where it stays. The third one, of course, everybody is waiting to see exactly what happens. I just, between the Suicide Squad piece, which everybody knows that when it comes down to that one, I did not really like his version of the Suicide Squad all that much. It just didn't appeal to me. There were a couple of scenes in that movie that were okay to me. On the whole, as a movie, it fell apart to me. I didn't like it. Like I said, the 3 Guardians movies, it's almost like a Star Wars situation, and I am freeing and being willing to admit that you've made 3 movies that, with the exception of certain things about them, they're almost identical. You're telling the same story throughout 3 different pieces. And Peacemaker, as a streaming show, it's okay to me. It's not a hate or love kind of thing. I've watched the show, but all of the things I just mentioned combined, in my opinion, were not enough to give the man the job that he's now holding at DC. I just don't see it.
I agree with you. One thing that I'll add before we talk about another topic, which, by the way, we should also talk about, we should do a discussion on Kevin Feige as well, because decisions are being made on that end of it. But one of the things the last thing that I'll add to this is the fact that James Gunn seems to be doing something that I fault him for. In other words, I said, given all the circumstances, the fault is not just his, but I still put fault on him despite the circumstances, because the decisions that he's making, and you reminded me of this, seem to be like personal and like kind of like, you know, when you're canceling things that you didn't produce, but are keeping things that you did produce, but the things that you produce are not as successful as the things that you didn't produce. In other words, you're keeping things that are not as successful as others because of your involvement in it. That means that you're being a little bit petty and not seeing the big picture. Mm-hmm. And so there are several examples of that he's done, where he's canceling things that he shouldn't be canceling, but keeping things that actually can stand to go. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, I absolutely agree with you that his resume doesn't merit the job. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 to me was a terrific movie, great movie, fun movie. I give it 2 thumbs up, way up. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 to me was a failure. And another topic of discussion is what makes a good movie. So the first topic is, what are the fans looking for in terms of what's a good superhero movie? What's their expectation? And another topic that I want to talk to you about is what makes a good superhero movie? What is the expectation? And from a technical point of view, I can point to you the difference between Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And the global difference is that Guardians of the Galaxy 2 went a little too silly. It lost its track. It got off the rails. It just went a little too far with the silliness, and it became just whatever. That's not good directing. I like Suicide Squad. I liked it. I'm not crazy about it. I'm not going to write home to you about it, but I liked it. From a technical point of view, I think it delivered what it was supposed to deliver. I like Peacemaker. I find that show to be hilarious. I find it to be fun. It probably is among my favorite superhero related TV show material compared to Disney stuff as well as HBO stuff. So, but that doesn't merit, hey, let me give you the whole kit and caboodle of the DCU. You haven't proven to me that you get Superman. You haven't proven to me that you get Batman. You haven't proven to me that you get the superhero genre. Like you haven't proven that. What superhero movie have you made? Suicide Squad doesn't really qualify. So I agree with you 1,000%. Guys, let us know what you think. Let us know if you agree or disagree. And join us for the rest of the conversation that we're going to start right now.